Hi and welcome to Let's Talk, all about books, social media and fun events going on in Auckland. My word of the week is emoto, which is proving to me how hard it is to keep up these days. We'll also have a few words with Takapuna librarian Helen Woodhouse about how hard libraries are working to keep up in a world where books themselves are under pressure. But first, in our spot about nifty things to do around Auckland, let's meet food expert Ellie Armand-Jones, who knows just where to go for great local eating and can take you there too. Hello Ellie, great to have you at Let's Talk. Now you've founded a company called The Big Foodie. So as the Big Foodie of Auckland, yes, it's quite a big title to take on. How did it begin?
I came to New Zealand in 2003 and spent a very long time just investigating the city and working out what was here. And
so you came from England?
Came from England. Mm-hmm. Came from just outside Cambridge. Came for 6 months, and it's been nearly 10 years. And spent a long time just investigating what we had in the city and the culture, and discovered we have this incredible food scene.
Were you a foodie then?
Yep, I'd done a bit of chef training. I'd worked in some restaurants and kitchens and hotels. But it was very much a case of arrive completely blind and discover these incredible food halls and restaurants and the water and everything that Auckland had to offer, the spice markets.
I mean, the Aucklanders who live here, we absolutely don't think of ourselves as having fabulous food halls and spice markets. I mean, for that we think of maybe Melbourne or Adelaide for food halls or Morocco for spice markets. So tell me more.
Yes. I think there's about 14 big food halls in Auckland. And you're right, a lot of the tourists who come through and come on our tours are gobsmacked that we have these facilities where we can just go and have a fabulous $10 lunch. And we took a couple of guys from the South Island out the other week who had no idea that Auckland had all that on the doorstep. We have these amazing spice traders who are based all around Sandringham area, Simon Street, there's one around the corner here, who you can walk in and you'd think you're in Marrakesh or in Morocco or India.
And we're in deepest, darkest Grey Lynn here
absolutely,
at our studio. Yes.
Absolutely.
So whereabouts is the Grey Lynn spicy place then?
Yes. Just carry on up the road, just
in Richmond Road, or
somewhere down the hill.
So Big Foodie, you decided, okay, there's all of this wonderful food here, not enough people know about it, and then did you think to yourself, is there a business in this?
Yep, I've done a couple of food tours around the world and decided that...
You mean as a customer?
As a customer. And thought that it's a really nice way of showing Auckland off. It's such a transit city that people are either coming in and going straight out, or they want to spend a couple of days here and investigate it rather than throw themselves off the Harbour Bridge and off the Sky Tower. So saw that there was a business opportunity.
That's interesting, because New Zealand always markets itself as this sort of big adventure place, and it seems that most of our marketing is all about bungee jumping or skiing or whatever, but I venture to suggest that maybe that's only about, what, 10–15% of the people who visit? It's hard to know. There must be a lot of others who want something more gentle and easy and relaxing.
Cultural, yeah. And I think with the wine industry really taking off as well, and food tourism in general is just becoming massive around the world. I can't remember the last count, but last time I looked it was around 300 different food tour companies in the States alone.
Gosh, yes.
So it's becoming massive, and people like spending a day discovering a city through its food.
So how do you run a food tour? What do you do?
Depending on where you are, we either meet at the fish market in the mornings, or we pick you up from your hotel and we disappear off. We go out to places like Kohu Road Ice Cream in Portage Road in New Lynn. They have the most incredible ice cream. It makes people happy. Their dark chocolate ice cream should be an antidepressant. It just puts a smile on your face and off you go for the day. We go to places like Sabato in Mount Eden, and I think that is just a world-class showroom and showcase of New Zealand products. Jackie and Phil have got it down to an absolute T, and not only with their European imports but with all those New Zealand products as well, we can really demonstrate what New Zealand has to offer. So that's a fabulous part of the tour. The fish market is huge, and no one really understands what fisheries mean to New Zealand industry. We fish up to 270 different species of fish in New Zealand, so it's quite a large amount.
And did you tell me before we came on here that you've actually been out on the boats too, so you know how it's done and what it's all about?
Yeah, we're doing an auction tour in the morning. So that'll be Thursday, Friday morning, starting at 6:15, bright and early. We'll be there with coffee, but we're going to meet the auctioneers, we're going to see the auction, we're going to meet some of the fishermen if they're dropping off, meet some of the buyers, so it's going to be a really nice way of actually understanding the industry. So to do my research for that, I headed off down to Tauranga Harbour and stood on a sandbank with a guy who's been fishing the harbour for 43 years. And he and his son collected the fish from their nets, and I stood there looking at the world thinking, this is incredible.
Yeah. So I suppose summer's really your big time, is it, when the tourism season's at its full peak? Or?
Yeah, Christmas is busy with you know, corporates as well. It's a really nice way of taking a small business out for the day.
I guess, yes. It's a different thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah,
because it's always so hard for companies to know what can we do for our clients that's interesting and different.
But it's also, I think people just tend to stay in their area. So it's nice to be able to pick people up, take them out, show it off. So definitely over summer, spring, we've got some Melbourne tours happening, taking some Kiwis to Melbourne in March. And we're looking at a Hong Kong tour and a UK tour later in 2013.
Wow. What do you think New Zealand does particularly well in terms of homegrown food and home-produced produce? Have you got some particular sort of hero favourites at the moment?
I think our cheeses are just fantastic. The cheese industry is amazing. The likes of Crescent Dairies out at Taupaki, out at Kumeu, they're just incredible. Their cheese is fabulous. I think we're just so lucky just to be able to plant something and it grows. You know, that to me is just amazing. Obviously the wine's going really, really well at the moment. We're getting some really lovely artisan producers. There's some pine nuts coming out of Marlborough which are just superb. And who would have thought that pine nuts in Marlborough? It just amazes people.
I don't know much about where pine nuts grow normally. I always thought it was a kind of a tropical sort of crop.
Yeah, it's a sort of Middle Eastern, Mediterranean type. That's where it's generally sourced from. But these are just superb and creamy and lovely. So being able to show people that we have not only wine and Sauvignon Blanc coming out of Martinborough, we've got pine nuts and truffles.
So what is it about food tourism? Why do you think it's on the build so strongly at the moment?
I think it's just something different to do. It's not wine, it's not adventure, it's not culture. We can wrap all of that into the food tour as well. And we get a chance to really show a city off by its taste buds and the cultures that live there.
And what sort of thing are international visitors saying to you after they come and see all of this stuff? What sort of reactions are and are they really surprised?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. They don't expect it all to be in one city. Global cities have pockets of different areas. We've got it all. And they are just amazed that, especially the rate that Auckland's changing at the moment with its food scene. We've got great chefs coming back from overseas, starting up some fabulous restaurants. And the rebuild of the different areas, like we said earlier, Britomart, Imperial Lane, Takapuna, there's just going to be some great food coming through there.
Yeah. And what about locals? What are they saying? I mean, do they get surprised about their own city as well when they do these things?
I have not done one tour with a local where they have been to all of the places. So maybe out of the 6, 7, 8 places we go to, a couple may have been to 1 or 2. Yeah. But yeah, it's always.
There's so much of it, isn't there? I keep on reading restaurant reviews and things in local papers and things. And thinking, where is that? Where is that? I haven't heard of that place. There's just so much of it coming up that it amazes me that, I mean, given the enormous capital investment in starting a good restaurant, it staggers me that they can all make a living.
But I think what really happened was the global financial crisis has really laid tribute to that, because people started eating at home. They stopped going out and being flamboyant. They started concentrating on cooking at home and became genuinely interested in food and in what was being produced locally. So then they were able to go out
and television shows must have made a huge difference as well, haven't they? The likes of MasterChef and Gordon Ramsay and Jamie Oliver and all the rest of it means that we're a whole lot more sophisticated about food now than we were not too long ago, I guess.
And people are really happy to experiment. So,
do you sometimes do orientation tours, I think you mentioned to me earlier?
Yep, so if you've moved into Auckland and you have no idea what's on your doorstep, we will pick you up and take you out and show you. And that's a lovely way to get to learn your city.
Great idea for a business. Terrific idea.
Yeah, well, it's certainly picking up, and people are really appreciating it. They're not nervous about buying from different places. We can quite honestly and truly say to them, this is fantastic. That's not.
Yeah, so is this mainly in relation to food? So you're not saying to people, there's the library and that's a great theatre and all of that sort of thing?
No, we do point that out.
Right,
we do very definitely point out the areas of interest to people moving into areas that they might have only been there 2 or 3 weeks. So, for example, I had a couple last week. We took them down to Takapuna, took them to the pump house. They were gobsmacked. Had no idea it was there. Absolutely no idea. And did a really big tiki tour around Takapuna. So to them, that was just a great way of sort of grounding themselves and saying, okay, we're here.
Well, it's all about hospitality, really, isn't it? And New Zealanders are pretty good at showing that sometimes, I think. Thank you very much indeed, Ellie.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The word emotion has been pulled apart a lot in recent years. First we had emo, rock music and fashions, characterised by thick black glasses and vintage striped shirts. But now emoto is the buzz, mainly because of an online project going on around the Olympic Games. Emoto shows an ever-changing analysis of the world's emotional response to what's going on in London. It does it by sorting out what people are tweeting. You can see what sports have attracted how many tweets in the last 60 seconds, spot which athlete, event or topic's getting most attention, get a feel for how positive or negative the vibes are, and watch a constant flood of Olympic tweets sliding horizontally across your screen. If you're like me, you can also be utterly bogged down in the jargon that goes with this new way of looking at things. Emoto gets its info from something called a salience engine, which is integrated into systems for business intelligence, social media monitoring and brand management, and includes modules for sentiment analysis, named entity extraction, theme extraction, entity level sentiment analysis and summarization. And I'll stop there because my brain hurts. You can see all this for yourself at emoto2012.org. New Zealanders are great readers. We buy books on a scale seen in few other countries, and we love our libraries. What I'm noticing about libraries is how lively they've become. The days when you'd be shushed for talking out loud are long gone. All over Auckland they're full of the sound and laughter of story reading and the clacking of keys as more and more online activities happen there. Librarian Helen Woodhouse's home base is Takapuna, and she's come out from between the shelves to talk to us about what it takes to run the sort of library we all want to visit in the 21st century. Hello Helen, welcome to Let's Talk. Now
Hello,
tell me, how long have
Lindsay.
you been at Takapuna Library?
I've been at Takapuna since 1984 when it was Takapuna City Council, before it had amalgamated to North Shore City, and it was before they had computers, using old card catalogues.
And stamping date stamps in the back and things, I suppose, when people came to borrow the books. Everything's changed so much, hasn't it?
It has, and I was thinking when you asked me to come on the show, when we built Takapuna Library and we moved into the new building, that was in 1989, the internet wasn't even a blink of the eye. You know, to build buildings and to plan for how things will be, and you can see how far changes have come. But essential services are the same for libraries, that bringing books to the people, it is actually the same as it always has been, and putting people in touch with their favourite authors.
Speaking of favourite authors and bringing books to the people, New Zealand's lost recently Margaret Mahi, children's writer, who of course was one of the people who became synonymous with sort of going into libraries, wearing bright clothes and crazy wigs and reading out loud and raising lots of laughter in the corner of the library. So did you ever work with Margaret?
We were very privileged. Margaret did at least 2 events at Takapuna Library, including the launch of the magical verse of Margaret Mahi, which was compiled by Tessa Duda. That's the Word Witch.
Yes. Yeah.
And she always gives, or gave, so much attention to people, and I always remember how she would acknowledge the readers and how they put what was special into the book. Of course, it really was Margaret that put the special words, but she did attribute people's imagination to making her books come alive, and she was just that sort of person who was so generous in what she did.
Yeah.
And the other time was when Tessa wrote the biography.
Tessa Duda.
Tessa Duda wrote biography, and we did an event at that stage.
Okay. Well, I can remember libraries in the old days when I was a child, and they really were places that you whispered in, weren't you? And you weren't supposed to sort of be making any noises, and you almost tiptoed. And it was probably when you were a young librarian that you could remember that sort of thing. But
Definitely.
now it's so different, isn't it?
It is. And funnily enough, I think occasionally you'll get people wanting a quiet space, and I think that's something that when we're planning libraries, we need to think of designated noisy places and quiet places, because libraries are also havens. And I think we're lucky enough at Takapuna that it is a biggish library and it has got quiet space.
But they've also become kind of internet cafes without the coffee, haven't they? And
Absolutely.
there are always, in every library, at least a dozen people sitting there tapping away, and because you do free wireless, which is such a gift for anybody who likes to go online and do their emailing and surf the web and things. Yeah.
And I was just looking at our customer comments, and there was this lovely little comment from a French girl from Paris, and she said, "Thank you, you're welcome, it's so nice. And it is so wonderful to have free internet, and it makes me feel at home in your country."
Yeah.
And I thought libraries are a home away from home for their residents, but also for visitors, and we are one of those portals to New Zealand.
Yes, that's for sure. Now, tell me though, let's get back to the real business of libraries, which is books. Are people borrowing books as much as ever?
On the whole, they are. I think there's a slight decline at our library, but I think that's got to, for other reasons. But we have more people coming into the library, so the actual visits have gone up. So for other things, whether it's for studying or for coming in for events or coming to children's programs, because we do a wonderful series of children's programs.
Yeah. Because there's not just story reading a la Margaret Mahy, is there? There's storytelling in lots of libraries
that's
now.
Right.
Which,
yes.
And they're really noisy and vibrant and exciting for the kids.
Actually, I should say that all the Auckland libraries are doing, or almost every Auckland library is doing an event for Margaret Mahy this Saturday, and they're mainly at 11 o'clock. I think it'll be on the website exactly what time, but they're having Margaret's stories read in honour of her.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a legacy she's left, hasn't she?
She has.
Well, if anybody ever wants to leave a legacy, leaving the written word is a pretty good way of doing it.
It is, and I think when I think of that, I think Takapuna's been lucky, because we've been a place where the New Zealand vernacular style started with Frank Sargison's writing.
Of course.
And so I think that it's had that heritage of writers writing there and enjoying a place that gave them that tranquility. And you still have those echoes of that. It's just a hop and a skip from the city,
yes.
But it's...
And a hop and a skip from the beach as well. There's lots of other librarians must envy your position.
I remember Linwood Barclay, he's a Canadian thriller writer. He spoke at a lunchtime, and he said, "Never and anywhere in the world have I come to such a lovely view." And it was just one of those beautiful days where you could see out to the sea. And
Rangitoto's just sitting out there. Yeah, wonderful. One of the amazing things that's happened in libraries in recent times, and it must have been huge from your point of view, is the business that now in Auckland you can pick up a book somewhere in Papakura and drop it off in West Auckland or Rodney, or there's this fabulous system going now where you're not stuck with your own little local library anymore.
That's so true, and people love it. It's almost like it's a tourism within Auckland. I was speaking to a man the other day, and he comes over from Mount Albert to Takapuna. He just likes the atmosphere, and he likes working there, so he probably has a business from home, and he likes to get out. And
he's physically doing that.
Yes, he's physically doing
what I'm talking about is, this wonderful business of if you're, on the road and you think,
yes.
I've got the library book, I should have left it in Takapuna, never mind, I can drop it off
Absolutely.
at Waitakere.
Yes.
Is fantastic, because it's freed everybody up from the tyranny of having to go to the same library. But that must have been a huge system to set up. There must be tons of books crossing the city all the time.
There are, but I think one of the things is the libraries were actually working prior to amalgamation. They had a pre-amalgamated system, so things I think have come into place quite quickly and well, and that certainly was the most successful thing I think we did at amalgamation.
I've read that in America a lot of community libraries are actually closing down, and I saw an immensely sad thing once on telly a few months ago where there was just a hole in the wall, where you pushed your book in and I think you could somehow access something that you'd requested. There wasn't even a building anymore. Do you think that, is this going to be a pressured situation for New Zealand libraries in time to come as people read more online and
I would
download
hope
books more?
I think people themselves, our libraries are our people's libraries, and it's what if people are loving and using their libraries, and I think they will continue to do in New Zealand.
And what sort of books are Auckland is borrowing? Do you have an idea of, is it New Zealand authors are particularly popular, or is it really the big blockbusters like the Lee Childs and the Jodi Picots and things that are requested most often?
I think that the blockbusters certainly are as successful as they've ever been, but I do think that people are much more interested in New Zealand literature than they used to be, and I think I would attribute that in part to being able to see authors and hear them speak. And I mean, the Auckland Writers and Readers Festival has been a wonderful asset to Auckland,
yes,
and brought people in contact with their local authors. I also think that there's a lot more people who are publishing, and they can do that in a small way. And some of the publicists that I used to work for doing events,
self-publish, get your stuff printed and published.
They now manage to get their work out there, just a few copies, and do start small, but the word goes out, and then they can do reruns once the book becomes more successful. So I think that's another development.
And are people happy enough to pay a fee now that they didn't used to have to pay? If they want a really hot book now, you can get one for $5 for a week or a couple of weeks or whatever it is. Do people object to that, or are they willing to pay the premium for being able to lay hands on it right when they want it?
I think that's exactly what they're happy, is because they can get that book right there and then. I had a woman yesterday, and she was coughing and spluttering and just wanting to go home to bed, and she just had found the book she wanted there and then, and that served her well.
I had to laugh the other week. I was actually in Ponsonby Library and just overheard a conversation. The guy came in and said he wanted 50 Shades of Grey for his wife. And
Love it.
don't know if that was so or not. And the librarian laughed and she said, well, you can join the waiting list of about, I think it's about 1,300, she said, of people wanting this new hot book. Is it that much? Do you know?
I think it would be a high number, but what you have to realise is that we have got 55 libraries, so we do buy quite a lot of copies when it's a very popular book. So it might sound a lot, but if you divide it by the number of copies, it's probably not so bad.
Yeah. So the art and passion for reading and of reading isn't about to die anytime soon, Helen?
It isn't, and I think that the e-readers, people are loving downloading e-books. They're loving having access to Freegal, which is downloadable free music. They can get 3 tunes a week, and that's really successful.
And that's what, Freegal?
Freegal.
I don't know about Freegal.
F-R-E-E-G-A-L, and it's a service that's provided by Auckland Libraries.
Oh, fabulous.
So
I'll look it up. Thank you so much for the tip, Helen Woodhouse. It's a long time since Play-O pianos were all the rage. About 100 years ago, in fact. If you're so young, you have no idea what they are. They were pianos, sometimes also called pianolas, that played all by themselves, using a complicated system involving perforated rolls of paper. Not ones to let a good instrument go to waste. An American outfit called Digital Kitchen has adapted one to take requests sent by Twitter. Of course, a piano that special has to have a name, so meet Stanley. He got rolled out a couple of weeks ago for a party in Seattle, which, being a centre of high-tech excellence, was of course just the right place for old and new to be forged into something funky. Back in May, Carole Beu reviewed a novel called The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. Since then, it's been long-listed for the most prestigious Man Booker Prize. I read it and I loved it too, and we thought you should take another look at Carole's review. Welcome back, Carole Beu from the Women's Book Shop. What have you got to tell us about this week?
An absolutely delightful novel that I think is going to become a hit book. It really is. Rachel Joyce has written it. Now, I've never heard of her before. It's a first novel, but she is a very experienced film and television writer in England. And she's written this novel, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. It's about an older man, retired, who actually walks the whole length of England. Now, he and his wife live in a house right down the very bottom of England, as you know, almost on the south coast, as far south as you can get. She cleans the Venetian blinds and vacuums and hoovers and dusts, and he sits in his armchair and mows the lawns, and she keeps telling him to go and mow the lawns again.
Does the crosswords and watches the telly.
Sits there and they do nothing, basically. And they don't communicate. And one day Harold gets a letter from an old colleague, a woman that he used to work with many, many years ago, and he hasn't seen her for 20 years. And she writes to tell him she's dying of cancer. So he writes a reply, and there's been some incident with this woman, not a relationship at all, but a work incident that is unresolved, and you don't quite know what it is. You do find out as the novel progresses. He writes a reply, but he feels it's rather inadequate. And he sets out to go and post his reply. And he gets to the letterbox, the post box down the road, and thinks, oh, you know, what I've said, what do you write to someone who's dying of cancer? What I've said's not very adequate. And so he doesn't actually put it in the post box. He thinks, I'll just walk to the next post box. So he walks to the next post box. And then he walks to the next post box. And then he walks right out of town, and he just keeps going. And he walks the entire length of England, right up to the Scottish border. It is extraordinary and wonderful and funny and totally and utterly charming, and really quite moving as well.
It's a terrific premise, isn't it?
Oh,
that
it's a
you'd walk out of
marvellous
your house
premise.
one day without a wallet or
He doesn't
money
have
or
it. He doesn't
anything,
have a
a
cell
raincoat.
phone even. He doesn't have a raincoat. He has nothing. He goes in his boat shoes, and he actually has to get the boat shoes resold a couple of times en route. It's fascinating. It's a character-driven novel. You watch the change in him because he's walking not just physically but emotionally and spiritually as well. So he's going on a journey. But
And meanwhile, Mrs. at home is going
goes on
spare, I
well,
suppose.
she initially does. Initially does. And initially you don't even like her very much. But she goes on her own journey. She's been very isolated. She makes friends finally with the neighbour next door and discovers how lonely he is since his wife died. And they become genuine friends, and she can finally, eventually, confess to him that Harold's walking the length of England. Eventually people follow Harold, like he has these sort of apostles almost, or waifs and strays who walk with him. And he does finally get there. And I'm not going to tell you what happens when he gets there. It is quite extraordinary.
Tell you what, it's going to make a terrific movie too.
It would be a brilliant
Wouldn't it be a
movie?
wonderful movie?
Yeah. A lot of people loved the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society a few years ago.
Yeah.
This one is like that. It's going to have hugely wide appeal, and people are going to love it. It's just utterly charming.
It does sound pretty good. Thank you so much,
Thank
Carole Beu.
you.
Thanks for watching. Next week we're talking about the fabulously refurbished tepid baths, and we'll meet Joanne Drayton, the Aucklander whose biography of crime writer Anne Perry is the book everyone's talking about.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.